I look like absolute shit today, and I know that. So yeah, I couldn't be bothered doing anything. My hair is a stupid length right now. I'm just, like, physically and mentally, I'm just not there. Like, I cannot deal with having to do anything about this. As you can tell from the title, it's been a shitty time for me. Because I had a miscarriage. Because of all this, I will be taking a short break from YouTube. It will be 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, like 2 to 3 weeks of a small break. I will be back, and I will be back and happy and better than ever. Hopefully. I just have to deal with this both physically and mentally. I'm so tired. Like, physically, I'm so freaking tired because of all these things that's been happening to my body. Because of how brutal this miscarriage was. So I will be taking a short break from YouTube, but I will be back in a couple of weeks, so don't worry about that. I'm just going to tell the story of how and why, well, not why, because we don't know why, but how, and you know, everything that happened with this miscarriage and pregnancy and everything. Because this may come as a shock to you guys. Well, to some of you guys, I have been talking for a long time about children, and that me and my husband will be having children soon and everything. But I haven't announced a pregnancy because, you know, I want to wait until the first trimester is over, because these things can easily happen. Well, easily. Yeah. Sort of easily, I guess. There's a bigger chance of a miscarriage when you're less than 12 weeks pregnant. So I was really close to having to announce my pregnancy. I was 10 weeks pregnant when I got the miscarriage. I was supposed to go to my first ever scan on the 7th of March, March 7th. You know, the scan where you see if there's a possible chance of the baby having, you know, Down syndrome and everything, so you have time to get an abortion if you don't want to deal with that. And also just to hear the heartbeat for the first time, I think, and, you know, just to see it and everything. That never happened. I never got to do that. I'm quickly just going to, you know, I did post on Instagram about it where I wrote the entire story. And I'm just, well, not the, it was like a quick version of the story, and in this video I want to share the entire story just because it was brutal. It was a really brutal miscarriage I had, and I want to share that, both because that's my way of dealing with things, is to share it with the world. I don't know why, I'm just a born attention whore, that's who I am, I guess, but also because if anyone out there one day has to go through the same thing, I want them to know that this is sadly something that can happen, and a way that it can happen. I'm just going to take off my glasses because the glare from the window. But my miscarriage was so brutal and painful, like extremely painful and brutal. So I was shocked, I was scared. Not only was this miscarriage, you know, mentally shitty, because I lost my baby. I was 10 weeks pregnant. We planned so much. We got names for whatever gender it might be. And like, my stomach had started growing a little bit, and I could feel it, obviously, because I couldn't feel the actual baby, but you know, I could feel it on my body. So it was so hard emotionally for both me and my husband to lose this child, because we both wanted it so bad. I'm just quickly going to, well, not quickly, I'm going to go into the whole story, beginning from, you know, when me and my husband decided to get pregnant. And let me just see the date for today. Today it's the 25th of February, and you will probably not see this until a few weeks later. But just so you know where I am in the storyline right now, today is the 25th of February. Me and my husband got married on November 3rd, and a few weeks after that already we decided that we wanted to be parents. We talked about it since the beginning of our relationship. First we were like, maybe a couple months after our wedding we will try, but then we were out one day in this romantic, you know, we went to a cafe and then we went to the movies, and it was just such a romantic fun day, and I just felt so much in love with him, and I don't know, I just got that feeling of like, yeah, now's the time. So we talked about it, and then I threw out my birth control pills. I had like 2 left in the pack, so I didn't throw out like a lot. I still have some in case something happens, in case I have to take them again. But I threw the last 2 ones out in the toilet, more like a symbolism, I guess. And then we tried, and it, you know, usually when you're on birth control, it takes at least 3 months before your body is back to normal. So we were expecting that I would get pregnant in February, like that I would be pregnant then, and then we would find out that I was pregnant in March maybe, because it does take some time. It takes about 4 weeks before you know you're pregnant, before I can test it and everything. So we were expecting like, alright, we have until March to find out if we're pregnant, maybe even longer. But I took a positive pregnancy test already on the 12th of January. My mom has always, you know, gotten real easy pregnant. Like, she just, as she says herself, you just have to look at a pair of men's underpants and then she's pregnant. And my husband's dad is basically the same way. He can make women pregnant like that. So, you know, my husband got his dad genes, I got my mom's genes, and we just got crazily fast pregnant. I was pregnant, I got to the doctor, got a blood test, a pee test, all that, and they all said, yeah, you're pregnant. My boobs grew a lot. Like in these 10 weeks I was pregnant, I had to change, like my boobs grew 2 cup sizes. I was a G cup, and now, you know, my boobs are still that size because they haven't gotten time to go down yet. But now they are an I cup. Like, that's insanely big. So I got all the symptoms. I was pregnant. We were happy. We told our newest family and everything, and newest friends. And then on February 20th, like a little more than a month after I found out I was pregnant, I was 10 weeks, which is 2.5 months pregnant. But then I woke up in the middle of the night. I think it was like 1 in the middle of the night, 1 o'clock. And I was like wet between my thighs, and at first I just thought it was sweat because I was a little bit warm. But then I just felt it just to be sure. And I looked at my fingers and it was dark. So I went into the bathroom, and it wasn't like a lot. It hadn't even gotten on the bed. It was just, I don't sleep with any clothes on, I sleep naked. You know, it somehow didn't get on the bed even though I wasn't wearing anything, but it was just kind of down my thighs a little bit. So it was just like on the first day of your period, you know, where it's not a lot, it's just a little bit, and you're like, ugh, shit. But it's too much when you're pregnant, because when you're pregnant you can bleed a little bit, you know, spot bleeding I think they call it, but you shouldn't bleed like you're on your period. And you definitely, like, this was fresh blood, it was completely red, and it shouldn't be that either. Like, if you're pregnant and you get the spot bleeding, it has to be like a dark brown kind of color. It's so gross. But this was bright red. So I freaked out. I showered, freaked out, and then I went into my husband, who was still asleep. Like, he can sleep through anything. I don't know how, but I went in and I started crying and hugging him, and then he woke up, obviously, and I told him, like, I'm bleeding, I started bleeding. And we woke up, we sat up, turned on the lights, and we were like, well, we cried for a little bit, both of us, because that was scary as hell. And my husband, you know, he cries whenever I cry. And I actually wasn't in pain at that point, at all, actually. I was just bleeding a little bit, and the bleeding had actually stopped. It was just that small amount. So a part of me was like, well, I was just confused, honestly. I didn't think it was a miscarriage like right away. I knew like there is a chance that this is just blood and there's no reason for it. So I called my mom because she had 5 miscarriages, and then 2, I think it's 1 or 2 abortions that she chose herself, and then she had 5 miscarriages that, you know, she obviously didn't choose herself. But I called her because she experienced this shit thing 5 times. I cannot believe that she had survived that, because holy shit. But she tried it 5 times, so I called her. I was like, Mom, I'm bleeding. As soon as I said that, she was like, alright, call the hospital. I will be there at your house in a second. She lives like 5 minutes away in a car, you know, in car drive. So yeah, she got here, and meanwhile we called the hospital asking like, should we come up here there? Like, what do we do? And they said like, well, if you're not in pain and if the bleeding has stopped, we can wait until the morning. So, you know, that was it at that point. And then my mom was like, alright, I'm gonna go home, but if there is anything, call me. If it gets worse, call me and I'll drive you to the hospital. And then during the next 2 hours, I started being in pain. I started getting like period cramps. It felt exactly like period cramps. So my mom came and she drove us to the hospital. I got a scan, but the fetus was very, very small. It did not look like I was 10 weeks pregnant, which already there, it worried me, but I was also trying to be positive, so I was like, maybe I miscounted, maybe I'm just not as far in it as I thought I was. The fetus was so small, they could not see if it was alive. They could see that it was there, but they couldn't see if it was alive. They couldn't scan the heart to hear the heartbeat. So they were like, alright, you have to come back in a week and then we will see if the fetus has grown. Because if it's grown, it's obviously alive. And yeah, so we went home again and I was like, I have to wait a week. But I didn't have to wait a week. Because shit happened. The day after, this was on a Wednesday. Or, you know, the night between Tuesday and Wednesday. That all this happened. And then on the Wednesday itself, you know, we went back to bed, and then on Wednesday we went home to my mom's house, and while we were there I was bleeding a teeny tiny bit. I was having a teeny tiny bit of period cramps, and I honestly thought like that was it, you know. It was just, I just got my period, because, you know, I also read some women randomly during their pregnancy can get a little bit of their period. And then the baby's fine and healthy and the heart is beating and everything. So I was kind of leaning towards that, hoping. But then during dinner time, the cramps got so much worse. And there started coming fresh blood again. So we called the hospital again. And she said like, well, you're in the middle of a miscarriage then. There's nothing we can do. Then my mom drove me and my husband home, and we cried for a long time holding each other. We were both so sad, and I was also in a lot of pain, and it was just shitty. And, you know, it's just, the pain kept getting worse and worse and worse. It was so painful. Then for the entirety of the Thursday, it was just like, yeah. Really bad pain. It was a little bit worse than period cramps, but not a lot. So Thursday was fine. It was just how it is. Friday night, well, you know, the night between Thursday and Friday, in the middle of the night, I woke up with like a lot of pain. I'm not even going to say the worst pain, because later you will hear I experienced a way worse. But this was really, really bad pain. And I could feel like I was wearing a pad because I knew I was bleeding, and I could feel like, you know, sometimes, I know this sounds gross, but when you're on a period you can sometimes feel like something's coming out, you know. And I could feel that, but it just kept doing that. Like, I kept feeling that coming out feeling, and it felt like big lumps, you know. I'm sorry about these gross details, that's how it is. So I went to the bathroom to check on my pad, and again, magically somehow, I did not get any blood in the bed. I don't know how, but the bed was clean. But I got out there, I removed my pad, and there was like a mountain of lumps and blood. Luckily, I also didn't get it on the bathroom floor because I whipped it inside the toilet. And then I went into the shower because I felt like it keeps coming. So I stood in the shower in a lot of pain and a lot of blood which is falling out of me for about 30 minutes until the blood has completely stopped. And again, my husband didn't wake up during any of this, even though the bathroom is right next to our bedroom. So I don't know how he couldn't hear that I turned on the water and everything, but yeah, he sleeps like a rock sometimes. So yeah, that happened that night. A lot of blood, a lot of pain, and I didn't want to call the hospital at that time because I was like, well, this is what happened. Like, my mom told me about the last time she miscarried before she got my sister. And that was the same. It was just a lot of blood just pouring out of her. And then, you know, I went back to sleep. And I slept as much as I could, which wasn't a lot. Then during the Friday, like the day of the Friday, the 22nd of February it must be, it started again. Like, in the morning I woke up, I wasn't in a lot of pain. I hadn't bled that much ever since I went to the shower during the night. And you know, for a few hours in the morning there, it was actually fine. It was alright, you know. It was not fine because I was still in a little bit of pain, but you know, it was alright. But then it started again, like the pain started getting really bad, and I felt like, you know, again that feeling like it keeps coming out of me. So I went to the bathroom again, I took a shower, and I stood there for a while, and the pain was even worse than the night before. It was unbearable. And also, during the night, there was a really round lump in it. It was the size and shape and everything of like a grape. And it was completely round, and I'm pretty damn sure that that was the baby and the egg. The thing is, that's not the only thing that has to get out. In case you don't know, you have to poop out the baby and the egg, and then there's a bunch of other shit that's inside your uterus, which explains, you know, all the big lumps, all the weird shaped lumps. It's just a bunch of stuff that has been made to either protect your baby and, you know, also the placenta and everything. So that's why it can seem crazy that there are so many lumps in it. So yeah, during that Friday, I was standing out there crying. I was freaking out at these big ass lumps, and all this blood. I was like, how am I still alive? There's so much blood, and I was in so much pain. So my husband, he ran around the house calling so many people. He called. First, he called the hospital, not like 911 or whatever, you know, the version we have here in Denmark, but he just called the hospital saying like, this is happening. Should I call 911? Should I call an ambulance? And he also called my mom to let her know what's happening. She was already in the city where the hospital is, so she was like, I'm just going to stay here until I hear something, because if you're coming here, I want to be there, and you know, I want to see what's happening. And it got so bad, the pain and the blood kept coming, so we had to call 911, we had to call an ambulance, and they came. And I wore the biggest, thickest pad I had, and then I also, you know, wrapped a lot of toilet paper around and put it in my panties, and I wore underpants and 2 pair of shorts and then a pair of pants, because I was like, I'm bleeding so much, I don't know what to do. So I got in the ambulance, and right away he gave me some drugs. It wasn't morphine, but it was actually stronger than morphine, and I was like, are you serious? I thought morphine was like the strongest, but apparently it's not. He gave me some real strong painkillers, and at this time I could feel that the blood has actually stopped. So yeah, I got the painkillers, and they made me a little bit high, but not a lot. They made me like, I've never been high, and I never want to, because that's dangerous. But I have been drunk, you know, and it felt like I gotten a glass of wine too much. A little bit too much wine. So And they did work wonders. Like the pains just went away instantly. Also because they shut them up through my veins, and that works so quickly when you do that. So, you know, and then I got to the hospital and they checked me, they scanned me and everything, and they could see like, yeah, you've gotten rid of a lot of it, but there's still a lot left. And I was like, how is there a lot left? I've just literally shed out all the blood I had in my body, and you say there's still something left in my uterus. So they kept me there to see if they needed to, you know, scrape it out. I'm not sure exactly what you call it in America, but it's a way of getting rid of the fetus and the leftovers, I guess. It's a way of that they scrape it out. But it's also, it's not super harmful for the uterus, but it's not like super healthy for the uterus to do it. So they were like, we would prefer not to do that. The other option they had was to give me some pills up through my vagina, and then they would help my uterus, you know, poop up some more blood. But the thing about that is that I already lost so much blood, so they had to make sure that I had enough blood in my body, so, you know, if they gave me the pills, that I wouldn't die of lack of blood, you know. So they had to make sure, you know, take some blood tests and see how much blood I had and everything. And luckily I did have enough blood, so they gave me the pills, which I'm really happy for, because I did not want to go through that whole thing with the scraping out and everything. So they gave me the pills, and they also gave me some painkillers again, because when the uterus starts doing that again, it's super painful. So it wasn't that bad actually. I was just laying there and suddenly I started bleeding, and I was like, where did that come from? I'm not in any pain at all. So yeah, and my husband was there the whole time, and we had talked, and he bought me some food. Then after I was done bleeding that, I was like, it's over, it's nice and happy. Then they scanned me and they were like, there's still a little bit left. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? But she was also like, that will just get out on its own. There's no need to scrape it out. It's such a little small amount. So I was like, alright, fine. And we went home. And then for the entirety of the Saturday, you know, we went home to sleep. And then Saturday, it was just like Thursday, you know. I was in some pain and bleeding a little bit, but it wasn't too much. So I was like, I don't think it's over yet, because there weren't any big lumps in it. And, you know, I was still missing a couple of lumps up there. So I was just prepared to, you know, get them out soon. Sunday came and I was feeling so good that day. We even like planned to go and do some things and go out into the world. But like 30 minutes before my mom came to pick us up, the pain started again. Like, and again, for every time a bad pain started, it's worse than the time before. So this time it was even worse. It was so bad. I didn't bleed that much, but there was like big lumps coming out of me, and I was like, that's it. This is it. There was a lot of big lumps. And it was so freaking painful. But there, like, we called the hospital, and they were like, there's nothing we can do because it's not dangerous. This is normal. We cannot send out an ambulance filled with drugs to you if it's not dangerous. And I understand that, obviously. But when you're lying there in pain, you're just like, why the fuck not? Like, give me some drugs right now, you know? This was Sunday. This was yesterday, actually, now that I'm filming this. The thing is, like, they couldn't send an ambulance, but they did give me some painkillers. Like, you can pick up these painkillers at your local drugstore. They're really, really strong. Or that's what they said they were. So my mom picked them up for me because my mom is the best. And she came here with them, and I took some, and they did help. And at this point, I had been in so much pain. I was crying so much. I was like tensing up. It's so hard. I know, like, they keep telling you, breathe slowly and relax your body, because tensing up just makes it worse, but it's so impossible not to tense up when you're in so much pain. So at the end of it, I was in just as much pain as I was in the beginning, but I was so tired physically that I could not do anything. I was just laying there My eyes were almost not even open. I was in just as much pain, but I was just all quiet, and I was, I don't know, it was the worst feeling ever. I even passed out for a second because of the pain. But yeah, that went away slowly. And, you know, already all those things are so brutal. Like, you would think that that is a brutal fucking miscarriage. And I thought it was over at that point. But then, later that day, later in the evening, you know, I fell asleep earlier because my body was tired. And then I woke up and I was feeling pretty alright, you know. I mean, my husband talked a little bit, it was nice. But then the pain started again, and it was, again, this was like 100 times worse than the time before. Also because I think one of the reasons why it's more painful is because the uterus is tired, you know, it's a muscle, you know, and I could definitely feel that the last time, the last big pain thing I got, it did feel like it was just tired of this shit, you know, just like if you've been working out. I don't work out a lot, so I can't relate, but you know, if you've been working a muscle, it's so sore the next day, and you're like, just, you know, reaching out to grab something is like, oh, so painful, you know. And I think that's what happened to my uterus. Like, it was finally, it was relaxed. It's like, I've done a lot of workout today, but then there was still some left, so it had to like keep reaching out, you know what I mean? Keep pressing all that shit out. So it was freakishly, I screamed of pain. I've never in my life been in so much pain that I screamed. I literally screamed several times because I was in so much pain. I did not know what to do with myself. And my husband during this time, he was, oh, it was so painful to see him. That was like the worst. I rather wanted to be alone and then be in 10 times more pain than I was, because seeing him, he was just holding me and he was like, there's literally nothing I can do. Like, my wife is screaming out of pain and crying, and I kept saying like, I cannot do this, I don't want to be in pain anymore. It was so brutal, and my husband was crying and he was scared, even though he knew like, this is what happens apparently in a very brutal situation. I never screamed of pain. I never done that. I can't even explain how painful it was. It was just brutal, really, really brutal. It was a lot worse than anyone else I've heard explain this. So the pain slowly went away, and I actually slept. I fell asleep again, and I also slept during the night with almost no pain. And now we're here today. I didn't bleed a lot though. I just want to say that. That's kind of weird. I was in so much pain, but the blood was like, again, just the same amount as on your period. So I think, you know, it is over now. I don't know, because you never know with this, and that's the scary thing. Now that I'm sitting here, I'm alright. I haven't been in pain this morning. I haven't really bled that much either. And the thing is, I can feel, like, every time I stand up, I can feel my uterus inside me. I usually cannot feel my uterus inside me. That's freaky. But because it's been through so much, because it's so sore, I can feel it. Like, every time I move, it's just like, ah. So it's not pain. It's more that, you know, again, sore feeling. Just like when you move your arm after you've been using it a lot. So we hope that it's over. And I'm sorry about this long ass explanation about this brutal, disgusting experience, but that's how it is. It was so freaking brutal. I don't know, I will not be able to survive doing that again. I hope so badly that it's over. I think it is, because yesterday, the first time it started hurting, there were some lumps, and you know, I did see on the scan, like, she showed me like, this is left, and I know kind of, you know, size wise. So you know, the amount of lumps and stuff that came out of me yesterday looks like the same amount that was in my uterus still. And also, as I said, the last night when I was in the worst pain I ever felt, there didn't come anything out. So I'm not sure if it's my uterus, you know, closing in again, because it's the whole thing, you know. When you have a miscarriage, your uterus expands, so all that shit can come out, and that hurts when it expands. So, you know, maybe it's been expanding, and then the last time it hurt, I hope that it hurt because it's retracting again, or whatever you call it, because it's pulling itself together. That's my theory, and that's my hope. And we're so young. I know that we will very quickly become pregnant again, and that pregnancy will probably not end up in a miscarriage. Like, you know, I'm 23, my husband is 22, and already there's such a low chance of having a miscarriage. So the fact that we got one now is like, the next time we're pregnant then, in like a month or two, hopefully, we never know, there will be like, it's almost impossible to get another miscarriage. Also because there's nothing wrong with me physically. It's something else if you have some sort of disease that rejects the baby. Or again, if you're older. But I have nothing of that. I'm young and healthy, so yeah. That's one thing to comfort myself. Like, the next time I'm pregnant, it will, like, 99.9% sure be a keeper. So yeah. It's so hard still. Like, even though we didn't know this little thing, we didn't even know the gender of it, or the sex of the baby. I'm not sure what the difference between gender and sex is. In Denmark we just have one word for it. So, you know, we didn't even know that, but we still felt so connected to it. It's hard, like, and I feel like a lot of people will be like, you're only 10 weeks pregnant. Like, again, you haven't even seen it on a scan. You don't even know its gender. You haven't even felt it kicking or anything. And I know that. I haven't done any of that. I haven't even seen my baby until that scan where it was dead. But, yeah. I don't know. It's... I understand that it's hard to put yourself into that if you haven't been in that situation. But it is so hard, and especially when it's followed by all these extreme pains that I've been through. Also because it's just a way my body keeps reminding me of what's happening. Like, if it just took one day with a lot of pain and blood, then it would be over and I would be able to move on. But because I spent so many days in so much pain, I kept being reminded, like, my body is killing my baby right now. And that's... It's just hard, you know. I don't know why, but it makes it even harder and even more painful to think that way. But it's also hard not to think that way, because you can feel it and you know this is what's happening right now. This is why I'm in pain, is because my body is killing my baby. And there's a lot of people saying, like, this sucks, but there's a reason for it. Like, if you had a miscarriage, it's because there's something wrong with the baby, and it's just your body's way of rejecting it. And I know that, and that also helps a little bit to see it that way. But it's still hard. It's still like, but there shouldn't be anything wrong with my baby. That's the thing. Obviously there has been something wrong. Obviously my baby has been sick in some way, not being able to develop, and then obviously it's a good thing that my body gets rid of it, so we don't end up with a really sick, like, child who can't do anything. I want a healthy, happy child, you know. But it's like, well, it should be healthy. It shouldn't be sick, it should be healthy. I've done everything right, and that's the worst thing. I know it's not my fault. I know that. It's just hard not to feel that way, because I'm the one carrying it. I'm the one making it. I've done everything right. I haven't had one single drink, even though people say, like, you can have a drink once in a while. And even though people say, like, you shouldn't have caffeine, but you can still, you know, you can drink like 3 cups of tea a day without harming the baby. Like, I have not drinking any tea with caffeine in it. I've went out and bought tea that didn't have caffeine in it just to be on the safe side. And I didn't drink any energy drinks because of the caffeine. Like, I don't drink coffee, so that's no problem. But, like, I have done literally everything right. everything. I've kept away from eating anything raw or anything that just looks raw. I've done everything right. And you know, in an extreme way, because as I said, most pregnant women, they do have a cup of tea and do have a glass of wine sometimes, but I've just, nope, none of that. I've been completely by the book, you know, but still this happened, and that makes me feel like a failure and like a piece of shit. And I know I shouldn't feel that way, but it's hard to say to someone in this situation, because literally I'm the only one who can affect this baby's health and well-being, and I know that some of it is out of my control. I know that. I don't know, it's just so hard, it's so difficult to deal with, so much pain to deal with, both physically and mentally, but yeah. I'm gonna end this video now. It's pretty long, and I'm sorry about that. I just had to get it all out there, tell you guys the whole story. Sorry if it was complicated and weird and depressing. That's just how it is. So yeah, I will see you guys in a couple of weeks. Hopefully I'll be feeling better. I will have to deal with it. I see a therapist for my winter depression, and I go to group therapy as well for my winter depression. So I do get help, and I can also talk about this thing with my therapist and in group therapy to deal with it, you know, because it definitely affected my winter depression. Like, I just started getting better. Like, I just started getting out of my winter depression, and then this happened. But yeah, if you want to keep up with me, you can follow me on Instagram, because I will post there once in a while. I will not take a break completely from social media, just YouTube. You know, Instagram is a little bit easier because it's just pictures from my daily life and what I'm doing, how I'm doing. So if you want to see me during these 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, then you can follow me on Instagram. That's the only place I will post anything on social media. So yeah, that was the video, and I hope it didn't bum you out too much, and I hope you guys are doing alright, and that you're not in this shitty position that I'm in right now. So yeah, I will see you guys in a couple of weeks.